Coming up on this Wednesday edition of Newsline at noon, a bipartisan group of South Korean lawmakers crossed the border to visit the inter-Korean Gaeseong Industrial Complex for an unprecedented inspection of businesses there. Wrapping up a meeting with US officials, China's top nuclear envoy says efforts are underway to revive the six-party talks aimed at denuclearizing North Korea. We take a look at the diplomatic efforts in full swing. Plus, South Korea's monthly industrial output drops by over 2% in September, reflecting weaker production in the auto industry caused by partial strikes. These stories and more on Newsline at noon.
Where's the best place for bibimbap?
Les Jeux Olympiques d'hiver se dérouleront-ils à Pyeongchang?
هل أنتم حقاً سابع أكبر مصدر في العالم؟
この歌手は誰ですか？你好，最近哪部电视剧的人气最旺？
Korea is attracting interest from around the world. The more you know, the more you want to know. Dynamic Korea.
Thanks for joining us. You're watching Newsline at noon. I'm Choi Yusan in Seoul.
Very good to have you with us. I'm Mark Broom. We start with a rare trip across the inter-Korean border by a group of South Korean lawmakers from the National Assembly's Foreign Affairs and Unification Committee.
They are currently at the two Korea's Gaeseong Industrial Complex, marking the first visit to the business park by lawmakers under the Park Geun-hye administration.
And the delegation was briefed on the current state of the complex by the head of the Gaeseong Industrial District Management Committee and will conduct on-site inspections of factories and other facilities there.
The lawmakers will also meet with South Korean businessmen with factories in the complex. While no meeting has been arranged with a North Korean representative, the possibility of such an encounter remains, and we'll bring you more details on that story in our next newscast.
Yes, we certainly will. And now, moving on to a flurry of diplomatic activity on the North Korean nuclear issue. It's raised hopes the long-stalled six-party talks on the North's denuclearization could restart soon.
But the massive gap between the U.S. and North Korea on the pre-dialogue conditions means getting all the sides together could prove challenging. Our Han Da-eun reports.
China's top nuclear envoy Wu Da-wei says he's confident the stalled multilateral dialogue on North Korea's nuclear issue will resume. Speaking after talks with his U.S. counterpart Glenn Davies in Washington, Wu said he's in the process of making a path to the reopening of the six-party talks. He also said Beijing and Washington are working hard to bring Pyongyang back to the negotiating table. China's efforts have raised hopes the six nations involved in the talks, the two Koreas, China, the U.S., Japan, and Russia, will come together for the first time since late 2008. But it won't be all smooth sailing as the U.S. and North Korea are sticking to their own preconditions for re-engaging in the talks. Washington first wants to see clear and verifiable steps North Korea is denuclearizing. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry is urging the North to comply with international nuclear non-proliferation guidelines.
And I will say that it is not words alone as we call on North Korea to comply with its international obligations. We need to move forward. We need to see how North Korea will respond.
The U.S. also says dismantling the North's nuclear program should be the core agenda of the talks. Pyongyang is unwilling to make the first steps in denuclearizing before the talks resume, also demanding other political and economic issues be discussed. Experts say North Korea is attempting to link the nuclear talks with other issues, such as the lifting of sanctions. The outcome of the talks between Wu Da-wei and Glenn Davies will be unveiled soon. It remains to be seen if China can satisfy both the U.S. and North Korea as the single most important mediator between the two sides. Han Da-eun, Arirang News.
Korea's industrial output saw its biggest drop in 6 months in September, casting a cloud over expectations the Korean economy may be on a path to a moderate recovery. Hwang Ji-ae has the details.
While there is cautious optimism about an economic recovery in Korea, some new numbers suggest that the Korean economy has yet to find its footing. Statistics Korea said Wednesday that the nation's industrial output dropped 2.1% in September from a month earlier, the sharpest pace of contraction in 6 months. The drop was also a turnaround from a 1.6% rise in August. The statistics agency attributed the fall to partial strikes of unionized workers at local automakers Hyundai Motor and Kia Motors. Auto production plunged more than 18% last month from August, pulling output down by over 2% overall. Experts say that the numbers show that it's still too early to assume that the Korean economy is on firm path to recovery. The central bank said last week that the nation's gross domestic product had risen 3.3% in the third quarter of this year from a year earlier, the first time it has topped 3% since the end of 2011. On a brighter note, a central bank survey showed that Korean manufacturers' confidence rose to a 22-month high in October based on their assessment of the business outlook for the coming month. Hwang Ji-hye, Arirang News.
Finance Minister Hyun Oh-sak is calling on Korean firms to actively invest and hire to help expedite the economic recovery. The government believes fresh investments are vital for a full-blown recovery. Yulian reports.
The Korean government appears determined to spur efforts to accelerate the nation's economic recovery. Finance Minister Hyun Oh-sak told a meeting of economic ministers on Wednesday that improving economic indicators released recently are not strong and extensive enough to remain optimistic about future economic performance. Those indicators included a better-than-expected 3.3% GDP growth in the third quarter, a large current account surplus that has stayed in the black for the past 20 months, and an improving consumer confidence level that has hit a 17-month high in October. Citing external uncertainties, particularly over the timing of the U.S. tapering of its stimulus programs and toughening competition with such neighboring countries as China and Japan, the finance minister urged businessmen to actively invest and hire more. Promising steps to streamline red tape, Hyun said some 1,800 small to mid-sized businesses will also benefit from a government fund that offers soft loans to startups for the next 2 months. The finance ministry also announced tax incentive to help expedite investment. Small and medium-sized companies will have their tariffs reduced by as much as 20 percentage points for machinery imports until next March, and enjoy greater accounting flexibility in handling depreciating costs to help reduce tax payments. Yurian, Arirang News.
Voting in by-elections for 2 vacant parliamentary seats is currently underway. The outcome of the election, though small in scale, is expected to reflect the public sentiment about a major election scandal surrounding the spy agency. Our Oh Jin-ju has the details.
Voters are taking to the polls on this Wednesday to select the lawmakers they want to represent their respective constituencies. 2 parliamentary seats are up for grabs, one representing the Hwasong A district in Gyeonggi Province, and the other South Pohang Ulleung Island in North Gyeongsang Province. Extra attention is being drawn to the Hwasong A district, a traditional stronghold of the ruling Saenuri Party. This is because the outcome will likely reflect public sentiment on the ongoing controversy surrounding the spy agency's alleged meddling in favor of the ruling party in the run-up to last year's presidential election. In his final pitch Tuesday, Saenuri Party candidate Seo Chung-won focused on regional topics directly linked to the development of Hwasong instead of national issues.
Hwasong is somewhat lagging behind other cities. I will do my best to accelerate development in this city by 10 years.
Oh Il-yong of the main opposition Democratic Party appealed to the public, saying it's time to raise the alarm on the Park Geun-hye administration.
The October by-election is not just about selecting a lawmaker. It is a battle with the current party in power that is going against public sentiment.
Unified Progressive Party candidate Hong Sung-kyu, who has strong regional ties to Hwasong, criticized both the ruling and opposition parties.
Public sentiment is swaying. Anger is growing against the two mega political parties, starting from the party nomination to the refusal to take part in TV debates.
148 polling stations in these two constituencies will be open until 8 p.m., and a rough picture of the winner should emerge by around 10 p.m. Oh Jin-ju, Arirang News.
For your fill of Korean and international news. Join Chae Yu-sun and Mark Groom every weekday at lunchtime. Newsline at noon.
Plenary session this Wednesday and vote on the government restructuring bills.
The scandal over the size and scope of Washington's surveillance activities continues to intensify, but the country's top intelligence officials gave the impression they don't really know what all the fuss was about on Tuesday during questioning by the House Intelligence Committee. Kim Hyun-bin reports.
America's top intelligence chiefs were hauled up before a House committee Tuesday to explain their agency's actions amid a series of reports about scope of the National Security Agency's surveillance activities.
The rules and oversight that govern us ensure we do what the American people want us to do, which is protect our nation's security and our people's liberties. So I'll repeat, we do not spy on anyone except for valid foreign intelligence purposes, and we only work within the law.
Clapper added that the U.S. did not indiscriminately spy on other nations and stressed other nations spy on U.S. officials as a matter of routine. NSA Director General Keith Alexander defended his agency, telling the committee that the NSA's main focus was preventing attacks on Americans and allies, and that it operates under strict oversight. Alexander also called European media reports that said the NSA collected data on tens of millions of phone calls in France, Spain, and Italy completely false.
Chairman, the assertions by reporters in France, Le Monde, Spain, El Mundo, and Italy, L'Espresso, that NSA collected tens of millions of phone calls are completely false. To be perfectly clear, this is not information that we collected on European citizens. It represents information that we and our NATO allies have collected in defense of our countries and in support of military operations.
The allegations of U.S. spying have forced the White House to promise reforms, and even acknowledge that their intelligence gathering activities may have gone too far. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
In the latest in a string of rhetoric between the two sides, Japan has warned China that its behavior over the disputed East China Sea islands is threatening peace and stability in the region. Japan has been reporting increased Chinese activity in recent weeks around the islands known as Senkaku in Japan and Diaoyu in China. Japanese Defense Minister Itsunori Onodera said Tuesday that the territorial intrusions around the Senkaku Islands fall into a grey zone between peacetime and an emergency situation. Tokyo has scrambled fighter jets 3 times in the last week after Chinese military aircraft flew near Japanese airspace. Japan's defense ministry is expected to revise the rules of engagement when it comes to foreign drones intruding Japanese airspace and ignoring warnings. The mystery is deepening over what was originally described as a major incident in Beijing's Tiananmen Square. On Monday, a vehicle carrying 3 people smashed into one of the city's crowded tourist attractions, one of the most crowded tourist attractions, and burst into flames. It killed those inside the car as well as 2 nearby tourists. Dozens more were injured. The government shrouded the scene immediately, and Chinese state media remains very tight-lipped about what actually happened. But a police notice does name 2 men thought to be ethnic Uyghurs from Xinjiang province as suspects in what some sources have called a suicide attack. Xinjiang is a restive region in western China, home to ethnic Uyghurs who complain of cultural and religious repression. In 2009, clashes between Uyghurs and ethnic Chinese in the capital of Xinjiang killed nearly 200 people.
The UN's efforts to investigate Iran's disputed atomic activities are gaining ground after a two-day meeting in Vienna, with both sides describing the talks as very productive. The International Atomic Energy Agency's Deputy Director General and the Iranian chief negotiator made a rare joint statement after talks on Tuesday that was itself seen as a sign of progress. The IAEA officials said Iran presented a new proposal on practical measures to strengthen cooperation and dialogue in order to resolve all outstanding issues. The Iranian side spoke of a new chapter of cooperation with the IAEA. The two have agreed to meet again in Tehran on November 11th, a few days after separate talks in Geneva with the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council and Germany. Syria's Deputy Prime Minister Kadri Jamil was dismissed on Tuesday for leaving the country and holding meetings abroad without the government's permission. State media reported that the dismissal came after Jamil met with the U.S. ambassador to Syria, Robert Ford, on October 26th in Geneva. The two reportedly discussed the possibility of holding a peace conference to address the conflict between President Bashar al-Assad's government and the rebel movement seeking his removal. 3 days after the meeting, President Assad issued a decree relieving Jamil of his duties for undertaking activities without coordinating with the government. And back here in the nation, a gathering of the most prominent scientists ever to visit Korea at one time. Nobel laureates were among the attendees at the Molecular Frontiers Symposium, which took place earlier this week in Seoul. Our Connie Lee was there.
It's the Great 12, or the so-called science superheroes, who gathered here in the nation's capital. From Nobel Prize winners, including this year's winner in chemistry, Aurier Warshel, to other leading scientists. The Molecular Frontier Symposium 2013 brought together some of the world's best science minds under one roof on Monday and Tuesday. Hosted by Korea University, the symposium welcomed more than 1,000 attendees, which included about 700 of the brightest high school students from all around the nation.
I want to hear the lectures and think about how I can apply my future career into the advancement of humanity and the field of science in general.
The students, not surprisingly, all have an interest in science.
I'm going to study about chemistry in the future.
Trying to become an engineer in science. I'm trying to work on curing cancer.
Whether it was a lecture on RNA or genetics, the scientists shared their studies, all the while encouraging the youth to continue with the research in the coming years. The more challenging the lectures, the more challenging the questions were when it came to the Q&A session.
All kinds of antibodies that target the exact place,
which attracted dozens of students to the mic.
Probably most impressive is the way they've been queuing up at the microphones to ask questions.
Richard Roberts, a Nobel laureate, reinforced the importance of empowering young people.
I think always with young people, they respond to opportunity. And the thing you have to do is to make sure that there are good opportunities for them to do the things they really want to do. And I think very often this is a question of giving them the freedom to do the things that they think is important.
Jenny Walden agrees. Perhaps the most unique speaker at this year's symposium, Walden is a reality TV star and now a celebrity chef who recently won top honors on MasterChef Sweden.
If I could just ask all the students to remember one thing, that never let go of your dreams and your passion, because that will make you thrive in what you do and make you become better. And maybe one day you can be the best.
Connie Lee, Arirang News.
Fantastic advice there. Now, 5 drone models made in Korea have been unveiled for the first time at an event in the northern city of Goyang. Unlike the contentious use of military drones, the developers of these unmanned flying vehicles say they can be used in a more peaceful way. Kim Min-ji has the details.
An airship carrying miniature drones gradually ascends into the air. When it reaches a certain altitude, the drones split off and start reconnaissance operations. Once their tasks are complete, the drones return to the airship. The airship plays the role of an aircraft carrier, which is able to expand the cruising capacity of the drones. These drones, called parse, which means hummingbird in Korean, float in formation. They maintain a certain distance from each other and move in harmony with one another. This new technology means it's possible to control the drones collectively and cooperatively. This cyclocopter has a propeller at the front, unlike a regular helicopter. They can be used to help in emergency situations, such as fires or in natural disasters, as they can fly close to ceilings or walls. These are 5 flight vehicles developed using Korean technology on display at the Seoul International Aerospace and Defense Exhibition 2013 at the Korea Exhibition Center in Goyang, Gyeonggi Province. All have been programmed to descend vertically, a technology that will be used in the development of personal aircrafts. These multifunctional drones that can travel on land and in the air were just once science fiction, but the developers hope they'll be part of our daily lives before too long. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Let's now get an update on the weather with our Lee Ji-hyun standing by at the Weather Center. Hello there, Ji-hyun.
Good afternoon, guys. Well, Halloween is almost upon us. And Mark, I've heard that the holiday has origins in Celtic Harvest Festival in Ireland, Scotland, and Wales. And I wonder how it's celebrated today.
Well, in the UK, it's pretty much celebrated like it is in the States and Korea these days too. You know, people dress up as silly things, but also scary things, and they go trick-or-treating.
Right. Also, if you're planning to celebrate the day tomorrow, the weather should cooperate, but be sure to dress warm to make your evening more enjoyable. Now, the temperature is continuing to drop in the mornings and afternoons, so take good care of yourself not to get sick. But luckily, we still have plenty of autumn sunshine to help us get going in the afternoon. And as we can see, we are looking at clear blue skies right in the nation. There are hardly any clouds hovering our peninsula, but a few clouds might be rolling into the nation as we go through the day. So we can expect gorgeous blue skies with wispy clouds later on. And the outlook for tomorrow, the Halloween, is similar to today's weather condition, with morning lows in the single digit and highs in the mid-teens. And the weather outlook for the rest of the week should be similar or most predictable, because in the fall in Korea, the weather conditions are pretty much predictable, so we can expect to have a similar weather pattern for the rest of the week. So with that in mind, let's take a look at the readings for today. The afternoon high in Seoul will make it up to 15 degrees Celsius, which is 59 degrees in Fahrenheit, and Daegu and Gwangju will get up to 18, while Busan will have a mild autumn day and the high of 21. Now for other regions, it looks like Jeju will see a few passing clouds with a high of 20, while Daejeon and Dokdo top out at 16 and 15, but Mount Kumgang will have a chilly afternoon with a high of at 8. Now that's all for Korea, and here's the global forecast for viewers around the world. That's all for me today. Hope you enjoy the rest of the day and enjoy your lunch break.
Okay, yes, we're almost out of time here, but what we're going to do right now is tell you that we're going to keep you updated throughout the day, of course, on what's happening up there at the Gaeseong Industrial Complex. A group of South Korean lawmakers is going up there for a rare visit.
And of course, the by-elections, the voting will continue till 8 p.m. Korea time, and we'll get the results from that later in our evening newscast. And
yeah, certainly looking forward to that. And that's pretty much all from us for now. But you can always catch up with what's been happening news-wise in Korea and around the world on our website, which can be found at arirang.co.kr/news.
Well, thank you for watching, and do stay with Arirang TV for more on the day's headlines.